Tom Brady might not be retired, but he's taking time off, while one of his former teammates has actually called it quits. I'm Joe Dolan, and this is the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup for Friday, August 12th, 2022.
It's time for the FantasyPoints.com Daily Lineup. Staying on top of the latest news and updates around the NFL. Rise and shine, folks. We're taking the field. Here's your host, FantasyPoints.com's Joe Dolan.
Starting at quarterback today, but not for the next 2 weeks, is the Buccaneers' Tom Brady. Now, Coach Todd Bowles said Brady will remain away from the team until after Tampa Bay's preseason matchup against the Titans on August 20th for personal reasons, Sarah Walsh of Fox Sports reports. Bowles told reporters that it was a personal issue that was brought to his attention before training camp. So this apparently is not taking the Bucs by surprise. According to Pewter Report, Bowles also noted that Brady wanted to be at camp early to get in reps before taking this time off. Interestingly enough, Bowles didn't give a full 100% commitment to Brady being the Buccaneers quarterback in the Week 1 opener against Dallas, merely saying that his confidence is, quote, pretty high that Brady will be under center for that game. Then on the Pat McAfee show on Thursday, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, who used to be a Patriots beat writer, said that it was, quote, not a medical emergency, but rather something to promote work-life balance. So did Tom and Giselle schedule a vacation for August in the 3 weeks when he was retired, and she wouldn't let him cancel? All joking aside, I am glad Brady and his family are okay, and I really can't speculate on why Brady is away. But this is merely another strange note in an offseason that already included one of the briefest retirements of all time, plus the revelation that Brady and Dolphins owner Stephen Ross had multiple rendezvous that led to tampering fines and suspensions for the Dolphins organization. I don't think this will affect Buccaneer ADPs for fantasy, but perhaps Brady's legendary hyper-focus waning will prove a tiebreaker for you in drafts. I still have to imagine that the diligent Brady of old will show up once his sabbatical ends. Starting at running back today, and for the last time, is Brady's former teammate. And I might add, someone whom Brady robbed of the Super Bowl 51 MVP trophy, James White. Unfortunately, a hip injury ended his career prematurely. It was an injury similar to the one that forced Ryan Fitzpatrick to walk away this year as well. The legendary comeback against the Falcons in Super Bowl 51 wouldn't have happened without White, who gained 139 yards from scrimmage, caught 14 passes, scored 3 touchdowns, and converted a 2-pointer during the game. And the lasting image from that game? James White fighting his way across the goal line for the win in the first overtime game in Super Bowl history, then getting absolutely blasted by jubilant teammate LeGarrette Blount, who hit him with an embrace at about 200 miles an hour. Fantasy players who love PPR will remember the White who caught 381 passes in his career, 38th most all-time among running backs. But in his healthy peak from 2015 to 2020, his 364 receptions were tops among all running backs, and an average of over 60 grabs per season. Patriot fans, of course, will remember the big moments. White had 8 touchdowns in his playoff career, and his 59 career playoff receptions ranked behind only Thurman Thomas and Tony Nathan all-time among running backs. Yes, James White caught more playoff passes than Roger Craig of those elite 49er teams. That's how good he was in the playoffs. Now, for 2022, his absence leaves a huge void in the Patriots' backfield. Our guy Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald has been absolutely adamant that Ramondre Stevenson is the Patriots' top pass-catching back. But when Stevenson has missed camp time this year, Ty Montgomery and J.J. Taylor split passing down work before rookie Pierre Strong returned to practice. At Fantasy Points, we've been juicing up Stevenson all offseason, but we accept that this situation could be fluid. There are 2 big wrenches. Evan Lazar of Patriots.com suggests Jonnu Smith, coming off a very disappointing first season in New England, could get some backfield work. While for fantasy purposes, Ty Montgomery is a wide receiver on some sites and a running back on others. He'd have much more value with running back eligibility. At our other running back spot was the best running back in the NFL over the second half of last season. That's the Seahawks' Rashaad Penny, who, despite his torrid stretch at the end of 2021, can't even crack the top 80 picks in fantasy drafts. That's for two reasons. One, well, the Seahawks drafted Michigan State's Ken Walker, our Graham Barfield's favorite back in the entire 2022 class. Two is the reason the Seahawks drafted Walker in the first place, that being Penny's injury history. And here we go again. Coach Pete Carroll relayed Thursday that Penny is dealing with a slight groin issue, Bob Condata of the Seattle Times reports. Yes, it is a slight groin issue, but a groin issue nonetheless for a player who has missed a lot of games in his career. Obviously, it makes sense for the Seahawks to be prudent with Penny. It'd be dumb to force him to practice or play in the preseason when he's less than 100%. But here's the key. Carroll went out of his way to talk up Walker on Thursday. Per Condata, Carroll said, quote, I'm surprised. I'm surprised he's so well-rounded. I think I mentioned it the other day, but his pass protection stuff, he just turned the page. I mean, he was not very good in college as a pass protector, but I think for this kid, everything is important. He wants to be great. Carroll went on to say that he could play all three downs, and we'd be comfortable with it. As much as Carroll loves to run the ball, he wants his backs to keep the quarterback upright. And if Walker can prove he can do that, he's going to be hard to keep off the field. I know the Seahawks stink, and I know how good Penny was last year, but I found it hard to resist clicking the button on Walker as a 9th-round pick on Underdog. At wide receiver is a guy who averaged a lower depth of target than most running backs a season ago. The Cardinals' Rondale Moore in his second season is being asked to step up. Head coach Cliff Kingsbury said during OTAs that Moore is ready to step into Christian Kirk's former role as the top slot receiver in Arizona, and ESPN's Jeremy Fowler continued that drumbeat in a recent training camp article. Kirk owned an ADOT of 12.1 yards last year, and he saw 23 targets that traveled 20-plus air yards, which is in stark contrast to Moore's paltry ADOT of 1.2 yards and 4 deep targets. Literally, I mean, he was getting the ball thrown to him at the line of scrimmage. I've never seen anything like this from a wide receiver before. It is yet to be seen if Moore can play more than the gadget role he played last season, but he has some untapped fantasy potential if he can see more downfield targets with Kirk out of town. Fantasy players, however, are skeptical. Moore is just so small, and even with Kirk gone and DeAndre Hopkins suspended 6 games, Moore is coming off the board in the 10th round in underdog drafts. At our other wide receiver spot is someone who was drafted after Moore last year, but way before him this year for fantasy. The Lions' Amon-Ra St. Brown is looking to build on a fantastic rookie campaign, and quarterback Jared Goff thinks he can do it. In the same article by Jeremy Fowler mentioned just a moment ago when we were talking about Rondale Moore, Goff said that he's, quote, looking for him, meaning St. Brown, when things break down, and I'm looking for him when we need a play. He also praised Amon-Ra's understanding of coverages at a young age and added that he can take a, quote, sweep to the house. St. Brown posted 7 carries for 61 yards rushing and a touchdown during his rookie season, and it sounds like the Lions could try to manufacture more touches for him in 2022. He's no bargain at his current ADP of wide receiver 25, but he showed his immense upside when he ranked as the wide receiver 2 overall in the final 6 weeks of 2021. And as our Scott Barrett pointed out on Twitter, St. Brown's final 6 games of his rookie season were legendary. Among rookie wide receivers all time, only Odell Beckham and Randy Moss averaged more fantasy points per game over their final 6 games. The list of high finishers also includes A.J. Brown, Michael Thomas, Justin Jefferson, Anquan Bolden, Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison, and Julio Jones, all in the top 15. And all those names I just rattled off, by the way, St. Brown was above all of them. Is that a small sample? Of course. Is that company St. Brown in juicy? Absolutely. In our flex spot, and so hopefully something we can stop talking about soon, is the Browns quarterback fiasco. 2 things of note were reported on Thursday. First, Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland Plain Dealer reports that the Browns will consider acquiring the 49ers' Jimmy Garoppolo if Deshaun Watson's 6-game suspension is significantly increased during the NFL's appeals process. Secondly, Rob Maddie of the AP reported that Watson is willing to accept an 8-game suspension and a $5 million fine as a compromise, I guess, on his current situation, with the NFL seeking a ban of at least 1 full season. The first report makes sense to me, even if the Browns are already spending ridiculous money on quarterbacks who won't be playing for them in 2022. The Browns don't want to throw away a full season in the primes of Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Myles Garrett, and others if Watson is going to be suspended the entire season. Perhaps they should have considered that before acquiring Watson, but Garoppolo would represent a significant upgrade over their current backup / fill-in starter, Jacoby Brissett. The second report, I'm not exactly sure Watson knows what leverage is because he has none of it. And if he's leaking that he's willing to accept an increased suspension of less than a full season to try to force the NFL's hand, then what does that say about the innocence that he's proclaimed all along? I'm Joe Dolan, and this has been the Fantasy Points Daily Lineup. Now, I filmed this on Thursday night because I'm flying Friday morning to Canton for the Fantasy Football Expo. We're sponsoring the Friday night welcome party, we at Fantasy Points, meaning look for that logo, by the way. So if you're in town, please come say hi. And if you're not in town, head to fantasypoints.com for all your fantasy draft needs and use code LINEUP22 for an extra 10% off any package. Catch you in Canton, and if I don't, I'll see you next week, everyone.